They gave a sterile alien vampire woman to a man, but she returned carrying life. The colony was silent that morning. A pale blue light spilled across the metal streets, reflecting off the smooth surfaces of the human and alien dwellings alike. Somewhere high above, ships floated in the endless sky, carrying supplies between planets. But today, the quiet hum of machines and the distant chatter of workers did not matter. Something unusual had arrived, a gift, as the council called it. The man, Jalen, walked slowly toward the docking bay. He was tall, strong, and careful in everything he did. He had spent most of his life repairing machines and helping people survive on this harsh colony. Jalen had learned that the universe did not care about weakness. It demanded effort and patience. Today, he would face a test of patience unlike any he had faced before. The council had chosen him for a strange reason. They said it was an honor, but Jalen was not sure if it was honor or a punishment. The gift was a woman, an alien woman, and she was rumored to be sterile. No one knew why the council thought it was a good idea to give someone a companion who could not bear children, but in their eyes, this was a clever decision. When Jalen entered the docking bay, he saw her immediately. She stood in the middle of the metal floor, her skin pale and shimmering faintly under the lights. Her eyes were deep red, glowing softly, and her hair flowed like black liquid down her back. She was tall and elegant, moving with a grace that seemed almost unnatural. Around her, the council members whispered, giving polite smiles that barely hid their amusement. "This is her," one of the council officials said, bowing slightly. "She is from the Valand species. As you know, she is sterile. We believe she will make a suitable companion for you. Treat her well and she may learn your ways. She is limited in what she can give." Jalen nodded slowly. He had heard stories about the Valands. They were vampire-like in appearance, but they were not dangerous unless threatened. Still, their biology was delicate, and the council believed that giving a sterile female to a human would create no complications. The alien woman's eyes studied Jalen carefully. She did not speak. Her lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. Jalen noticed the tension in her body. She was alert, cautious, and maybe even afraid. I am Jalen," he said finally, unsure how to begin. "I welcome you to the colony." Her voice was soft but musical. "I do not understand why I am here." Jalen hesitated. "I neither, but we will try to live together, I think. We will see what can be done." The alien's gaze shifted to the council. She said nothing else. Her silence filled the room with tension. The council cleared their throats and stepped back. Jalen understood. They expected nothing, and they were ready to leave him with this stranger. For the next few days, Jalen tried to make her comfortable. He brought her food, explained the layout of his small home, and attempted simple conversations. She was polite but distant. She did not smile, did not laugh, and rarely spoke. Every time he tried to get closer, she seemed to pull back. Jalen felt frustration rising, but he forced himself to be patient. He had faced worse problems before. Machines broke, ships failed, people argued and hurt each other. But he had learned that patience could solve almost anything. He noticed small things about her that no one else seemed to see. At night, she would stare at the stars for hours. Sometimes, she would touch the small plants he had grown in containers, almost as if she was remembering a world far away. Once she picked up a small, cracked toy that belonged to one of the colony's children. She turned it over in her hands carefully, and for a moment her eyes softened. Jalen spoke gently. "Do you remember your home?" She nodded slightly. "I do, but it is gone. And now I do not know what I am." He understood. She was not just an alien. She was someone who had lost everything, someone who had been brought to this world not by choice but by authority. And yet she was alive. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, the alien woman, who Jalen learned was named Lyra, began to respond. She started speaking more often, asking questions about his work, about humans, about life on the colony. She learned the names of the plants, the taste of human food, and the way the machines hummed. Jalen was patient. He never forced her, never demanded anything. He only guided her gently. One evening, Jalen found her standing outside, staring at the horizon. The colony lights glimmered in the distance. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said softly. She did not answer at first. Then she nodded. "It is. I never saw anything like this before," he smiled. You will see more slowly." They walked back together. Jalen realized something he had not expected. He did not feel annoyed or burdened by Lyra's presence. He felt responsible. Not because the council told him to be, but because she was fragile in a world that could be harsh. She was alone in many ways, and he could help her. As the weeks continued, small changes appeared in Lyra. She laughed softly when a child tripped and fell, crying briefly before running off. She tried to imitate some human gestures, smiling faintly when she succeeded. She even began to touch Jalen's arm lightly when they talked about serious matters. Jalen noticed it, of course, but he did not rush. He knew that trust and understanding were more powerful than any gift or command. Then, one morning, something unusual happened. Lyra went to her mirror, staring at her reflection for a long time. Jalen watched silently from the doorway. She looked different. Her eyes were wider, more alert. Her hands trembled slightly as she touched her stomach, though she did not know why. "I feel something," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I do not understand it." Jalen stepped closer, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "What is it? Tell me." She shook her head. "I cannot. I am afraid." He nodded slowly. "Then we will wait. We will see what happens, together." The council had said she was sterile, that she could never carry life. And yet something in Lyra's body and her being was reacting differently. Jalen did not know what it was, but he trusted that whatever it was, it would reveal itself in time. The days following that moment were strange. Lyra moved carefully, eating differently, touching her stomach more often. She did not tell Jalen anything, but he noticed. He did not press. He only continued to care, continuing the small routines that had slowly become their life. One evening, as the twin moons rose in the sky, Lyra finally spoke. "I think something is changing. I feel life inside me." Jalen froze. "Life," she nodded, eyes wide. "Yes, but the council said I cannot." He smiled gently, though his mind raced with possibilities. "The council does not always know everything. Sometimes life surprises us." Lyra looked at him, a mixture of fear and hope. "Do you think it is possible?" "I do not know," Jalen admitted. "But I will help you, always. We will face it together." That night they sat together under the pale light of the moons. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to relax completely. She leaned against Jalen's shoulder, feeling warmth she had never known before. He did not speak, did not move. He simply held her, letting her know that she was not alone. Outside, the colony continued its usual hum. Machines worked, people argued, life went on. But inside Jalen's small home, a new chapter had begun. One that no council had planned, one that no prophecy had predicted. For the first time, hope existed where it had seemed impossible. And as Jalen watched Lyra sleep, he realized something important. Sometimes, what others call impossible is simply life waiting to show its strength. The stars outside twinkled softly, as if they knew what was coming. And somewhere deep inside, both human and alien, a spark of life was preparing to bloom. The colony woke to rumors. Whispers passed between corridors and docking bays like a restless wind. "She is carrying life. Impossible, she is sterile. The council must have made a mistake." Inside his home, Jalen felt the weight of those words, but he did not panic. He had already seen the subtle signs, the way Lyra moved carefully, the way she touched her stomach, and the soft changes in her behavior. Now the evidence was undeniable. Lyra's body was carrying life, something the council had declared impossible. Lyra herself was frightened. She had never imagined that her body could respond this way. Every movement, every sound made her cautious. Nights were long, filled with worry and uncertainty. "I do not understand it," she whispered one evening, her voice trembling. "I thought I could never, and now this." Jalen took her hands gently in his own. "Sometimes the body surprises us. Sometimes life is stronger than rules or predictions. You are creating life, and that is incredible." She looked at him, eyes wide. For the first time there was no doubt, no fear of judgment. "Only trust. Do you think it is safe?" He nodded, though he admitted he did not know for sure. "We will be careful. I will help you. You will not be alone." Word of Lyra's condition could not be contained for long. The council, initially skeptical, sent observers to verify. Some viewed it as a miracle, others as a threat. Humans and aliens in the colony stared with amazement. Some whispered, some recoiled, and some approached with curiosity. But Jalen focused only on Lyra. He knew that outside opinions did not matter. What mattered was the life growing inside her and the trust they had built together. The days were filled with careful routines. Jalen monitored Lyra's health, prepared nutritious meals, and adjusted their home to make her comfortable. Lyra learned to rest more often, to focus on calm breathing, and to embrace the strange new feelings within her. Slowly, she began to smile, small but genuine, a reflection of hope and strength. One afternoon, the colony council sent a delegation to observe Lyra. Their expressions were a mix of astonishment and concern. "Council members," Jalen said firmly, "she is not a project. She is a living being. Treat her with respect. Her life and the life inside her matters." The council hesitated. They were used to control, to ordering people and aliens alike. But here was something beyond control, beyond expectation. Life had chosen its own path. Days turned into weeks. The child inside Lyra grew, a silent presence felt in gentle kicks and subtle movements. Each sign of life brought both joy and worry. Lyra often looked to Jalen with questions, fear lingering in her eyes. "What if something goes wrong?" Jalen would squeeze her hands gently. "We will face it together. Life is unpredictable, but we are strong. You are strong." The colony began to watch them differently. Some still doubted, but others were inspired. Humans and aliens alike began to reconsider their ideas about limits and possibility. A sterile alien-carrying life was no longer just an anomaly. It became a symbol of resilience, of hope against impossible odds. As the time approached for the child to be born, Jalen and Lyra prepared in earnest. They cleaned the home, made a small cradle, and gathered essential supplies. Lyra's movements were slower now, her energy focused on the life growing inside her. She rested often, trusting Jalen to handle the details and to protect them both. One night, the moons were full, casting silver light across their home. Lyra's breathing quickened. She turned to Jalen, eyes wide and shining. "It is time," she whispered. Jalen's heart raced, but his hands were steady. "I am here," he said softly. "We will do this together." The labor was long and difficult. Lyra's body strained, tested in ways she had never imagined. Jalen held her hand, whispered encouragement, and reminded her of her strength. Pain and fear filled the room, but so did determination. She was not alone. Finally, after hours that seemed like days, a cry filled the air, a sound both human and alien. Jalen blinked, tears forming in his eyes. He looked at the child, small but alive, tiny limbs trembling, skin a delicate blend of human and Valen. Lyra, exhausted but smiling, reached for the child. It is real," she whispered. "Life, it is real." Jalen helped her hold the newborn. The baby's eyes opened briefly, reflecting both red and human brown. It was a miracle, defying every expectation, every prediction, every doubt. The council arrived soon after, cautious but curious. They observed silently as Jalen and Lyra cared for the child, noticing the love, patience, and respect between them. Some council members were speechless. Others, who had doubted, now nodded slowly, understanding that life could not be confined by rules or assumptions. Over the following weeks, the family adjusted to their new reality. Lyra learned to care for the baby, with Jalen's guidance and support. They slept little, worked hard, and shared moments of quiet wonder as they watched the child grow. Each day brought small joys, a smile, a laugh, a gentle stretch of tiny fingers. The colony slowly changed its view of them. Humans and aliens alike began to accept the family as an example of what could be possible when trust, care, and patience guided actions. Lyra was no longer seen as a sterile alien or a curiosity. She was a mother, a partner, and a symbol of life's resilience. One evening, as Jalen and Lyra sat together watching the moons, the baby sleeping peacefully between them, Lyra spoke softly. "I never thought I could feel this. Love, hope, happiness, I thought I was finished." Jalen smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You were never finished. Life had more for you, and together we found it." She rested her head against his shoulder. "I am glad you were patient, you cared. Without you, I do not know what would have happened." He kissed her forehead gently. "It is always easier when we face life together. We found something no one expected, and now we have a future." The colony, though still cautious, began to change. Families started to learn from their example. Humans and aliens slowly let go of old prejudices, seeing that life, trust, and respect could cross boundaries once thought impossible. Jalen, Lyra, and their child became quietly famous, not for power, not for status, but for hope. They showed that even in a world filled with rules, assumptions, and limits, life could surprise, could endure, and could thrive. Months passed and the family grew stronger. Lyra smiled more often, laughed gently at the baby's tiny antics, and allowed herself to dream of the future. Jalen continued to work, but now his home was full of warmth, love, and laughter, a home that had once seemed impossible to create. One night as the stars shimmered overhead, Lyra whispered, "Life is stronger than we ever imagined." Jalen held her hand, looking down at their sleeping child. "Yes, stronger than anyone predicted, and it all began because we had hope and courage and patience." The moons shone softly over the colony. Somewhere the council members whispered among themselves, realizing that their predictions had failed. But it no longer mattered. Life had its own rules and love had its own power. In the quiet of their home, Jalen and Lyra held each other close. They had faced doubt, fear, and impossibility. They had seen life emerge where none should have existed, and they knew deep in their hearts that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. And in that moment, as the child slept between them, the universe seemed to pause, recognizing the miracle that had unfolded. That even against all odds, life could bloom, hope could survive, and love could overcome everything. The colony had not forgotten them. Jalen, Lyra, and their child had become quiet legends, talked about in whispers and cautious admiration. Many came to see the family, curious about the impossible, the sterile alien who had brought life into the universe. Others kept their distance, unsure if such a miracle was safe or natural. But Jalen and Lyra no longer cared about whispers. Their world was small, full of love, laughter, and the soft cries of their child. Each morning began the same way. Jalen woke first, checking the small home for supplies and preparing breakfast. Lyra would soon rise, rubbing her eyes, brushing back her hair, and smiling softly at the tiny being sleeping in the cradle. Their child, whom they named Kale, had the pale skin and glowing eyes of the Valen, mixed with the warmth and softness of human life. Every movement, every sound, was a reminder that life had won. Kale was growing fast. The first weeks were delicate, full of careful attention. Jalen taught Lyra ways to support him, guiding her through feeding, changing, and soothing the baby. Though she was alien, Lyra had a natural grace, a gentle precision in her movements that made caring for Kale feel effortless. She learned quickly, adapting to every human custom while keeping her own traditions alive. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the metallic windows, Lyra held Kale in her arms while Jalen repaired a broken power unit outside. Kale's small hand reached out, brushing a strand of his mother's hair. Lyra's heart swelled. "Look at him," she whispered. "He is perfect." Jalen wiped his hands and stepped inside, leaning against the doorway. "Yes," he said softly, "he is, and he has your strength." Lyra smiled faintly, feeling warmth spread through her chest. She looked down at Kale, thinking about all that had happened, the council's orders, the whispers of sterility, the long days of fear and uncertainty. None of that mattered now. They had survived, and they had created something impossible. Life, however, was not without its challenges. Some humans and aliens in the colony still doubted Kale's place in the world. They asked questions, muttered concerns, and watched every small movement with suspicion. Lyra felt these doubts like cold winds against her skin, but Jalen always reminded her to stay calm. "People fear what they do not understand," he said one evening, holding her close as Kale slept between them. "But we know the truth, and the truth is stronger than their fear." Lyra nodded, feeling a courage she had never known before. She was not just a mother, she was a symbol, and though she never sought recognition, she accepted it quietly and gracefully. As months passed, Kale began to take his first steps. Each wobble was a small victory. Each laugh a celebration of life. Jalen and Lyra cheered, guiding him, steadying him when he fell, and marveling at how he grew, blending human curiosity with veil and agility. One day, a young alien woman approached their home. She had heard of Lyra's story and came with cautious hope in her eyes. I want to learn from you," she said softly. "I thought I could never, but now, maybe." Lyra knelt beside her, smiling gently. "It is never too late. Life finds a way, even when we think it cannot. Trust yourself. You can create a future too." The woman nodded, tears forming in her eyes. She stayed, asking questions, learning, and slowly gaining confidence. Lyra realized that her story had already begun to inspire others, and that hope could spread quietly, without force or demand. Outside the small home, the colony itself was changing. Humans and aliens began to work together in new ways, questioning old prejudices and limits. Jalen's work as a mechanic became symbolic. He repaired more than machines. He repaired trust, understanding, and the belief that life could be shared across boundaries. Lyra and Jalen spent quiet evenings together, sometimes speaking softly about the future. "Do you think Kale will understand everything?" Lyra asked, tracing her finger along his tiny hand. Jalen thought for a moment. "He will, not immediately, but he will know love, he will know patience. He will know that life can overcome impossible odds." Lyra smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. "I never thought I would have a family. I never thought I would feel hope. And now I have both." Winter came slowly to the colony. The light from the moons was pale, reflecting on frozen surfaces and the occasional snow-like particles drifting through the airlocks. Jalen and Lyra taught Kale to explore carefully, guiding his steps over slick metal floors. Even in harsh conditions, they found warmth in their home, in each other, and in the tiny life they had nurtured against all odds. One night, as Kale slept between them, a distant rumble echoed across the colony. A supply ship arrived from the neighboring planet, carrying new humans and aliens. They had heard of Lyra's story and wanted to witness the impossible for themselves. Curiosity mixed with fear in their eyes, but Jalen met them calmly. "This is life," he said, gesturing to Kale. "Not a tool, not a gift from a council, life." The visitors watched silently as Lyra held Kale in her arms. They saw the bond, the trust, and the joy. Slowly, some of them nodded. Slowly, some smiled. And for the first time, fear began to fade. Days turned to weeks. Kale learned words, laughter, and small lessons from both human and Valen traditions. Lyra watched, proud and astonished at his growth. She realized that the child was not just a symbol of life. He was a bridge between two worlds. Jalen, ever practical, noticed the changes in the colony. "They are starting to believe," he said one evening. "Not everyone, but enough. Our lives, our family, it is making a difference." Lyra nodded, looking at Kale as he crawled toward a small plant they had grown. "Life always finds a way, and maybe we can help others believe that too." The colony slowly adapted. Humans and aliens began to collaborate more openly. Schools and homes accepted Kale and other hybrid children. Prejudices softened, replaced by understanding. The miracle of one family had spread quietly but powerfully, reminding everyone that life and hope could not be confined by rules or fear. One evening, as the moons rose high in the sky, Jalen and Lyra stood outside, holding Kale between them. The wind was cool, the stars shimmered, and the colony glimmered faintly in the distance. "We did it," Lyra whispered softly. "We survived, we created life, and we changed things." Jalen smiled, brushing a hand across her cheek. "Not just us, life did it. We only helped it along." Kale cooed softly, reaching for both parents. His tiny hands grasped theirs, as if understanding the love that had created him. Lyra and Jalen held him close, feeling the warmth and strength of the life they had nurtured. And in that quiet moment they understood something profound. No counsel, no rule, no prediction could ever control life. It had its own path, its own power, and its own miracles. And sometimes the most impossible miracles happen when hearts were open, patience was strong, and love was unshakable. Years would pass. Kale would grow taller, stronger, and wiser. He would carry the lessons of both his parents, learning courage, patience, and the strength to overcome doubt. And Jalen and Lyra, they would continue to live quietly, patiently, and joyfully, knowing that their greatest gift, the life that had returned against all odds, was proof that the universe still held wonders beyond imagination. For in the end, the sterile alien woman had given life, and in doing so she had given the colony and the universe hope. And hope, once given, could never be taken away. Life in the colony had begun to settle into a new rhythm. Jalen, Lyra, and Kale were no longer strangers, nor anomalies. They were a family, and the colony slowly learned to accept them. But the universe rarely allowed peace without challenge. Whispers of doubt still lingered among some of the older, more cautious colonists. They wondered if Kale truly belonged, if the hybrid child was a mistake, or worse, a danger. One morning, as sunlight spilled across the metal streets, Jalen carried Kale to the small garden they had built. Lyra followed, her eyes tired but bright, watching the way her child toddled carefully across the soft, cultivated soil. Kale laughed, stumbling but steady, his tiny hands reaching for the plants. "You are too fast for me, little one," Jalen said with a soft laugh, holding Kale gently to steady him. Lyra smiled but felt a shadow creep across her thoughts. Even though the council had accepted Kale's birth, and many colonists had started to admire their family, not all were convinced. Some still whispered behind closed doors. Some refused to visit or acknowledge Kale's existence. Lyra had thought the hardest battles were over when Kale was born, but now she realized that life was never so simple. That evening, as the moons rose high and cast their silver light over the colony, Lyra sat quietly, holding Kale in her lap. "Do you think they will ever truly accept him?" she asked softly. Jalen knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Some will, some won't, but it doesn't matter. We have each other. We have him. And that is stronger than their doubt." The next day, a small group of colonists approached their home. They were hesitant, uncertain, and carried the careful expressions of those who had seen life challenge their expectations. We want to understand," one woman said, her voice trembling slightly. "We have heard about Kale, about your family, and we do not know what to believe. Can you teach us?" Jalen and Lyra exchanged a glance. Jalen nodded. "Yes, come inside. We will show you what life can do when patience and care are strong." Over the following weeks, the visitors learned about the routines of the family, the way Jalen and Lyra cared for Kale, and how love had made something impossible come true. Slowly, their fears began to fade. They watched Kale laugh, saw the gentle strength in Lyra, and noticed Jalen's calm guidance. They began to understand that this family was not dangerous nor unnatural. They were simply proof that life could defy assumptions, but not everyone was convinced. Some colonists still held on to doubt, spreading rumors and questioning the family's influence on the colony's traditions. One day, a council representative arrived with a formal notice. The colony recognizes your child, but we require proof that your family does not disrupt our society. Any irregularities must be reported immediately, the official said, cold and cautious. Jalen's jaw tightened, but he remained calm. Kale is a child, not a problem. We are not here to disrupt. We are here to live, that is all. Lyra placed a hand on his arm, feeling the tension in his body. Let them come, she said softly. We will show them nothing can harm Kale or us. The next months were tense. Observers came periodically, taking notes and questioning their routines. But each time the visitors left with the same realization. Kale was thriving, and the love of his parents had created a home filled with patience, learning, and joy. Meanwhile, Kale continued to grow. His abilities began to reveal the unique mix of human and Valen traits. He was agile, curious, and surprisingly strong for his age. He would climb small structures with ease, sometimes startling adults with his speed and balance. Yet he had a gentle heart, always returning to his parents when he sensed concern in their eyes. One evening, Kale returned from exploring the small courtyard, holding a tiny flower he had picked carefully. "For you, Mama," he said softly, offering it to Lyra. She took it with a smile, brushing it against her cheek. "Thank you, my little one, you are thoughtful already," Jalen chuckled. "And fast. Don't forget careful too." Kale laughed, running ahead again, disappearing behind a small wall before peeking back. His joy was contagious. Even those colonists who doubted could not resist the sight of a child so full of life and innocence. But challenges were not gone. One night, as the family slept, a distant alarm rang across the colony. A malfunction in the energy grid caused panic. Lights flickered and communication systems went down temporarily. Jalen sprang into action, quickly moving to repair the problem while Lyra secured Kale and the home. Kale, curious despite the danger, peeked from behind Lyra. "Papa, are you okay?" "I am fine, little one," Jalen said, tightening a bolt and checking the systems. "We will be safe, I promise." The crisis was temporary, but it reminded them all that life in the colony was unpredictable. Every day brought new challenges, requiring courage, patience, and unity. And through it all, the family relied on each other, learning that strength came not from control or authority, but from love and understanding. Weeks later, a festival was announced to celebrate the colony's progress. It was the first time humans and aliens would gather openly to honor cooperation and life. Jalen and Lyra were invited as special guests, though some colonists still whispered doubts. At the festival, Kale ran ahead, laughing, holding the hands of other children. The crowd watched in surprise as humans and aliens played together, sharing stories and games. Lyra and Jalen stood together, watching their child and realizing the impact their family had already made. A young council member approached Lyra. "I doubted, I admit it. But seeing Kale, seeing your family, I understand now. Perhaps life is stronger than our rules." Lyra smiled gently. "It always has been. Sometimes we just need to see it to believe." Jalen nodded. "And sometimes it is the smallest, most unexpected miracles that change everything." The festival continued late into the night. Kale fell asleep in Lyra's arms, tired but happy. Jalen carried them both back home, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a family that had endured and grown stronger. Back at home, under the silver glow of the moons, Lyra whispered to Jalen, "We have done more than survive. We have created hope." "Yes," Jalen replied, brushing her hair gently. "Not just for us. For everyone who sees life and wonders if it is possible." Kale, he is proof. Lyra rested her head against his shoulder. And he will grow, showing the universe what patience and love can do. They watched the moons reflect off the metallic walls, feeling the calm of the night. Outside, the colony slept, unaware of the quiet miracle that had transformed not only one family but the hearts of those who observed them. Life continued, full of small joys and quiet victories. Kale learned new words, new games, and the ways of both human and Valen culture. He laughed, ran, explored, and sometimes startled his parents with his boldness. But he also returned to them, seeking comfort and guidance, a living bridge between two worlds. Months turned to years. The family grew closer, stronger, and more resilient. Challenges came and went, weather, machinery failures, and occasional distrust, but they faced everything together. They had learned that love was the strongest force in the universe, stronger than fear, doubt, or impossibility. One evening, as Jalen repaired a small craft outside their home, Lyra sat with Kale, teaching him to observe the stars. "Look," she said softly, pointing to a distant cluster. "Life exists everywhere. Even where it seems impossible, it can thrive." Kale's eyes widened. "Like me." "Exactly like you," Lyra said with a smile, hugging him close. Jalen looked up, smiling at his family. "And remember," he said, "no matter what anyone says, you have the strength to face anything. Life will always find a way." The moons rose, shining softly over the colony. For Jalen, Lyra, and Kale, the future was not certain, but it was full of promise. They had survived doubt, defied expectation, and created something impossible. And they knew, deep in their hearts, that together they could face anything the universe sent their way. In a quiet home filled with laughter, warmth, and love, a sterile alien woman, a patient human man, and their miraculous child showed the colony, and the universe, that life, hope, and courage could overcome all odds. And so their story continued, not as whispers or legends, but as a living example, that love and life, once given a chance, would always triumph.